when you think about innovation, it's been the fashion for some time to focus innovation on the supply side, thinking about encouraging everyone to think, to do things. But it seems that there is a lot which we still could do, looking for the sustainable growth sources for the years to come on the demand side. And obviously, I think Mark Allen yesterday mentioned during the macroeconomic panel that we still have in the West, in the US, in the European Union, brands to sell, and there is still some market capacity to absorb these brands, to absorb our produce, our services. Taking this opportunity that we have Director General Pietras with us, who deals with a number of issues and policy areas like environment, consumer goods and services, health, which is another area for the years to come, to absorb innovative policies. I would like you, Director General, to comment on how we could possibly assist our economies and how can we make them good economies, providing for sustainable growth in the future using these policy areas.
Thank you very much. You have, when introducing me, you have forgotten to say that I'm also academic teacher, and normally I finish naturally after 45 minutes. But don't worry, I have been trained now. I'm working with ministerial meetings in Brussels, and all the ministers are allowed to speak for 3-4 minutes, and I have to reinforce this time limit. So I'm now trained to limit myself to much shorter time, especially that in even speaking or discussing between 27 ministers on very important issues, they're able to squeeze arguments to limit presentation on important issues to these 3 minutes. But in preparing to this presentation, I have refreshed my memories of the one of the Polish great writer on scientific books, which is Stanisław Lem, and he has written a story about a person, inventor, whose role was to invent names of the things. Once name was invented, there was only technical difficulty to create a thing. So what you had to invent is a name. And his role as a great inventor was invent a name. If you invent a name of a rod which is with a screen and you could play at home, then all the technicians could work with the screen or the electronics necessary. So you could do that very easily. So the problem is you have to have a reason and you have to have imagination to invent an idea, and the rest is partially technical stuff. But I think when you look how inventions are being driven or induced, you have to look not only on a supply side, who delivers, but also on whether it's needed. And that's a market. You know, you look at the market and you've got a verification of various ideas. There are many inventions that are useless. No one really wants them. So market is very important. And if we are discussing innovation and growth, we have to verify what is real innovation by a market. And here my question comes, where does innovation come from? To which extent they come from a market? And when they come from a market? When there is a market opportunity, and this is being captured by a company, or when it is competition that is forcing. But also, very often, it is induced by regulation. And what is being done in the European Union is very often to pressure for regulation. For example, looking at the example that was given already today on cooperation between Europe and US in area of CO2 emission reduction, by looking at the European car market and American car market. In Europe, we've got a very stringent regulations concerning emission levels allowed from a car, and this forced companies to produce much more energy-efficient cars. And now, technology and innovations related to that were driven by the standard setting. When you look at consumer goods, very often you set standards of a safety for consumer or center standard for how this can be used by consumers. And then you've got regulation-induced innovation. Obviously, on the market, you've got different situations, like, for example, internet provides for many things, and then regulators are realizing that they have not regulated it, and they try to catch up. but very often regulation come at the beginning of the process. And I think that there are great hopes in a global scale related to a climate change, to a global economy, as a way how you could fight with that by putting certain limits, certain targets, regulating it, and then you induce innovations that would lead to change of technologies to be less carbon emitting, much healthier, much better for environment. But here what comes is a challenge. I would say there are two major challenges. One, it is question of complexity, because once you start to regulate, indicate standards, you have to meet plenty of requirements. And when I look recently at the number of permits required or revisions required on environmental account, safety for workers, or fire protection and so on, then you see that making a building for a company and running company requires plenty of standards to be met. And it becomes very difficult, very complex. In the world terms, it's also very difficult to govern it. And I think there is a now growing problem of governance. For example, if we've want to have a regulation on carbon emission, it cannot be done in one part of the world. It has to be done globally. And therefore, it becomes a global problem of finding a global governance related to these issues. You cannot do it. No. So you could have a demand side either by consumers that demands more, or by producers that are able to deliver, but they create a demand, but also by government, whichever level it is, setting standards and pushing or inducing related innovation. But I think it may be difficult to, it is easy to imagine in a small area, in a small place, but once we come to a global market, it becomes also a huge challenge how to really govern it.
Thank you very much for this insight into the policy making thing. Actually, what it brings to my mind is the question about the role of the state and the government and the EU to make sure that innovation delivers also public benefits, because at the end of the day, innovation does not necessarily need to be good one. If you bring into mind back the instruments like collateralized debt obligations, which have proven not to be that beneficial for the society over the last few years. So some other issues are attached to what we've been discussing, but because time is passing very quickly, I would like to allow just for one very short round of questions. And could you please limit yourself to one question on a very short comment to engage with our panelists, opening to the public now, if there are any comments. Yes, the gentleman in the middle. If you could please identify yourself and affiliate with some institution.
I already spoke on this conference, but of course it's better to introduce yourself all the time. It's Leszek Jarzewski from Liberté magazine. I would like to address Professor Getz's presentation. I understood in your presentation that you think, or you've proven us that innovation not only creates a personal growth, but also the growth and profit for the company. Is that right? That's how I understood that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I would like to ask you, I think we all agree that iPhones are very innovative products, and Foxconn provides a large quantity of production for the Apple. So perhaps you could explain to us how those conditions like freedom, choice, responsibility, happiness apply to Foxconn companies in China. Because, and I would like to end with this suspicion, merely suspicion, I have no data to prove it, that perhaps merely a small percentage of companies in the world are innovative, and not necessarily performance and growth and wealth are created by innovation and freedom. I said very sadly, I'm a liberal, I support freedom, but I'm afraid that unfortunately, very often, efficiency is created by fear, by determination, and
And if you could pose the question.
yes. So,
Okay.
please.
Well, maybe I have then probably I guess you refer to the practices in the Chinese suppliers and the manufacturers of iPhone that led recently to a certain number of suicides of people throwing themselves from the roofs, and this Chinese company. It's not France Telecom, right? France Telecom had their own problems with suicides. And they solved this issue by putting the nets around the buildings. So the people that can throw themselves out from the roof, they don't fall and they don't kill themselves. And recently they said that they made a major progress in terms of handling that, and so they removed the nets, right? But your question is a very important question. I won't comment on iPhone. There is a lot of confusion between identifying innovative products with the innovative culture, right? Polaroid had an innovative product. Where is Polaroid? I'm telling about, working on the companies where everyone is involved in taking initiatives and driving innovation. This is not the only way. You have then asked questions about sustainability too, right? Apple is today here. It was not always here, right? It was there too. Where it will be in coming decade, I don't know. I won't talk about that. But your point is whether suffering, right? To take Marxist reference that you mentioned, right? And Marx obviously built a whole career on that, on exploitation, alienation of workers, and so on. Whether this is something inherent in a capitalist free market company. I wouldn't say that this is inherent on the principle level, but in practice, the figures that I've shown you, that 71% of people are disengaged, this is the result of something that's going on in the companies. And so leaders of these companies constructed or inherited from the Industrial Revolution, where the people who were engaged, they didn't know how to read and write, they were bringing booze to their workplaces, and they were leaving their workplace in Midlands in Great Britain, right? Whenever they wanted, you had to put foremen, you had to punch clocks, install procedures so that the people would simply stay for 10 hours and do something, right? We're not living in this world today, but we are operating as 200 years ago. And every day, the majority of our citizens in free countries, they find themselves in unfree organizations where they can decide for themselves what is the best thing to drive their organizational vision and strategy forward. And that leads, in extreme cases, in many, it leads to workplace stress, which is an endemic thing. We hear all this debate in the United States on healthcare. 75% to 90% of visits to physicians are due to workplace stress. And workplace stress is endemic in companies. Then in more extreme cases, it's depression, and in the very extreme cases, there are suicides. So yes, my answer is that in many companies, not only in China, but in most of the companies in the Western world, it's a major problem that is absolutely not addressed by the majority of companies.
Isaac, thank you very much indeed for this answer to the question, and we would stop at this very point because we have run out of time now.